So unfortunately, the project that I hoped would not take months has taken months, and for a couple of reasons. The first of which, my table saw broke right after the last episode, and while I was using it, the pulley came flying off the arbor shaft, and it went flying out on the floor. And when I inspected that further, it was not a stock pulley that actually went with the saw. It had apparently been replaced before, and the shaft had been messed with in some way or another. And so I just didn't really feel comfortable with using that. And so because of that, I kind of got out of the shop for a little while. So I went and I bought a new table saw, and then I returned the table saw because the bed, the table surface of the saw was not flat. We were quickly approaching almost 1/8 of an inch being off from one end of the table flat surface to the other. And I just didn't think that was acceptable, even though it was more of a budget saw, and maybe I'll talk about that more in the future. So I finally bit the bullet, and thanks to some encouragement from my wonderful wife, I bought a new table saw. I'm finally back out in the garage. The second update is that I got very tired of moving clamp lights around all over my shop whenever I needed light for whatever I was filming. And so back on Black Friday, I purchased some LED shop lights. But I hadn't really had a chance to get those installed, and it was just sort of low on my list because I had some light, even though it wasn't very good. So the lights are installed, the new table saw is here, and I've done a little bit of work off camera because, to be honest, I didn't really trust myself doing it on camera, and I didn't know how it was going to go. So I'm going to bring you up to speed, and we'll dive into the project. But first, let's shine a little bit of light on the situation, shall we? Much better. All right, let's get started. All right, so here we are looking at the cabinet so far, the Vanity. And I've thrown on a bunch of clamps because I have set this thing up as having a face frame, but also having inset drawers. And I went ahead and installed the drawer slides, and I wasn't exactly sure how that was going to go, having never used these Bloom drawer slides, but it was fairly straightforward, so that was good. And then, after I got those installed, I actually had to build a box. And here is my very first ever drawer. Never done this before. All right, so there you can see that I did a rabbet on the ends of the two sides there. And the most important thing is that when I actually put it in there, it fits. Look at that nice soft close. Okay, so after I had my first prototype built and I knew that I could build a drawer, it was time to go ahead and do that 2 more times. And for me, that involved milling down quite a bit of this rough cut lumber that I had. So I used the chop saw to cut that into smaller pieces because a lot of the boards I have are fairly bowed and warped. And even if it's just a little bit, you can't get really long boards out of them. And so I found that if I just cut them down closer to the size I was going to need, it was a lot easier to mill them down anyway because of the length of my jointer and so forth. So here I am just jointing those 2 faces to make sure that those are nice and square, and then I'll take them over to the planer and finish all the boards over there. The only thing I want to mention here is that dust collection is a highly underrated feature of any shop. once I had everything down to the correct thickness, then I could take it over to the table saw and start ripping all of my boards down to the right width. Probably one of the biggest helps to me in this whole process here was that I went ahead and finally created this crosscut sled. I've been needing a crosscut sled for a long time, but I didn't have the material, and then once I had bought some of the plywood that I needed, then I had stuff left over. This made it really easy for me to get nice straight cuts, and then to also do things like this where I'm cutting the rabbet on one end of each board. And here I'm just doing a test cut with a scrap piece to make sure that I've got the depth of the rabbet set and that my stop block is in the right place. So there we go. You can see the way everything fits together. I've got my little, it's just a 1/4 inch rabbet, and I think that's probably fine. But for being my second time at doing this, overall, I'm pretty pleased with how this all came out. So I guess the next thing is putting a groove in down here for the bottom panel. I decided to use 1/4 inch plywood for the bottom of the drawers, so I'm cutting that down here. And then when I've got those pieces ready, then it's time to actually assemble everything. I think I may have mentioned this before, but you'll notice that that back piece of wood for the back of the drawer is sort of a darker color. But since this is not unified poplar from, Lowe's, Home Depot, or Lumberyard, it's got a lot of variation in it. And at this point, since this is my first build, I don't really care too awful much about what the wood looks like. I did decide to put that piece at the back though. Once that was all assembled, then the last thing I had to do was just to put on the hardware that goes onto the drawer slides. It connects to these Bloom drawer slides. And it's a lot easier if you just get this little jig here that I'm using. It makes everything a lot easier to line up and make it all work. All right, so I have one drawer installed. Will these ones fit? That is the question. Oh, nice. I'm just gonna say it, this makes me really, really happy, because for some reason the idea of building drawers was like really intimidating to me, and I think I've done it pretty successfully, and I didn't mess anything up. So, pretty cool. Awesome. In the next episode, I'm going to focus on making the drawer fronts and the doors. I decided to do a separate episode for that because the two are very closely related and I batched them all out at the same time. So, see you in the next one.